Welcome back to another episode of the Nerf Report. We got a great show lined up for you this week. We have 6 brand new games to talk about. PlayStation is reportedly working on a brand new handheld. Nintendo's next console's release date gets a little more clearer. Xbox and Google are slapping each other out in the interwebs. And Elon Musk wants to open his own video game studio. All of this and so much more on this week's episode of the Nerf Report. Warning, what you are about to watch was made for fans of video games. We do not pretend to be experts, nor do we want to be. Our opinions do not reflect the beliefs of the brands or the companies that may appear in this show. If you are a fanboy, toxic piece of sludge, or a grade A asshat, this show may not be for you. Can you see me? Let's just film the video.
Zip it! The ghost of Macho Man Randy Savage is here!
Oh my god! Yes, negativity sells, and it sure as hell makes clicking your thumbnails a lot easier. But I, as a gamer, as a nerd, as a creator, I am so tired of being upset for clicks.
Are you listening?
Ho, 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 ho!
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you have been summoned here for another episode of the Nerf Report. And like I said in the intro, I mean, we got a great show lined up for you this week. Despite the fact that we are festive AF right now, whether it's the Garland microphone, old Saint Nick sitting here in the background, stockings, which I'm very curious as to what is in them. Spoiler alert, it's just trash and wrapping paper. But, you know, I am very much in the holiday spirit. I got in trouble this year because I put up our Christmas tree, dare I say, too early, right? I feel like there's no real line in the sand as to, like, when you're supposed to put it up. And we really didn't celebrate Halloween this year. Obviously, we went trick-or-treating, but we didn't put up too many decorations. 3 days before Halloween, I had our Christmas tree up. And I know there will be people saying, burn them. Burn them at the stake. Like, that is completely unacceptable. But I stand here and say, I needed some bright light in my world. So we put a tree up. And I will tell you this. If I was a doctor and someone came in and, you know, I'm not saying depression isn't a real thing. But if someone was like, man, I'm really blue and I'm down, I'd be like, did you put your Christmas tree up yet? Because I put mine up. And my mentality and outlook changed 40% for the better. Like, it was incredible. But anyway, before we jump into the show, I definitely want to give a special thank you to the Nerf Report, casual friends, and best friends who make this show possible. If you'd like to support this channel financially and get more content, you can do so by becoming a member on this channel, becoming a casual friend for the low, low price of $1.99 a month. Obviously unlocks a bunch of cool stuff, but most specifically, you get The Daily, which is our brand new daily gaming news show, which I think is super cool. The people liking it seem to think it's super cool, but that is a low, low cost of $1.99. Not only does it get you more Nerf Report and Nerf gaming news in your life, but it also helps us support the channel. But if you don't want to call us friends and you don't want to be a casual friend or even a best friend, you just want to keep it, you know, habitual, you can also support the channel by buying our brand new merch. That's right, we launched brand new merch this week, Christmas themed merch. May you have a Nerfing Christmas. Merry Nerfmas. Yes, we have brand new Nerf Report Christmas t-shirts and Christmas posters available in our store right now. 100% of those proceeds go directly to improving this show. And if you'd like to buy one, put it up. I'd love to see this poster in your house, or if you put it anywhere, definitely send me photos. And if you're wearing the merch and you got the shirt, please send that to me as well, because I am a big fan of that. I love seeing like Nerf Report stuff and like Nerf gaming news stuff in the field. Hands down my favorite. Friend of the show, Ben, printed off his own Nerf Report posters before we like had stickers and posters, went around town over in Europe and was like sticking them all around town and sending me photos. To this day, one of the coolest things that's ever happened in this show. So if you do get a poster, if you do get a shirt, please send me a photo. And thank you in advance for supporting this channel and making my dream come possible. But before we jump into our first story and start talking about PlayStation getting back into the handheld business for real this time, let's talk about a brand new game. We have a brand new trailer for an anti-combat roguelike video game that's surrounding a volcanic eruption. Like, you had me at anti-combat. Never heard of that before. So without further ado, let's talk about Dante's Ring.
A contingent being is a being which has not in itself the complete reason for its existence. That's what I mean by a contingent being.
Arkansas, 6 states hit
miles southeast of Manila, the Neon volcano has erupted for the first time in 10 years. Clouds of heaven mingle with the sluggish drifting fall of smoke. All held upwards with the gaping mouth of flames. Our cameraman flying at 8,000 feet shows the ultimate fight.
So PlayStation is internally working on a brand new gaming handheld that reportedly can run PlayStation 5 games natively, which I think I speak on behalf of the entire PlayStation gaming community by saying, please and thank you. Sign me up. Like, take my credit card, charge me whatever you want. I need this device. I want that. Now, obviously, all of this conversation has to be circling around the success of the PlayStation Portal. Like, PlayStation released the PlayStation Portal, and the last number that I read was that Sony sold anywhere from 400,000 to 500,000 units in the United States alone. And keep in mind, for the majority of the PlayStation Portal's life, you've needed a PlayStation 5 in order to use that. And now, with the new update to the PlayStation Portal, that you don't need a PlayStation 5 and you can just stream games via the cloud, I suspect that that number of 400,000, dare I say, double over the next year. I mean, that's not hard to believe, that if you don't need a PlayStation 5 to stream your games, that this thing is going to sell like hotcakes. Like, dear Santa, please, I've been begging you, give me another Portal. I have one. I'd like the 30th anniversary. That would be cool. And then you start to think about like how the market's evolving, right? Nintendo's coming out with the Nintendo Switch 2 sometime in 2025. Valve's Steam Deck is blowing up in popularity, and it's been catching on like wildfire. Xbox is reportedly working on a portable handheld. And I think when you look at PlayStation, not only in their community, but I think in the gaming community as a whole, there is a lot of demand for a device like this. Now, the story was started by Bloomberg's Takashi Mochizuki, in which they're pretty much reporting that Sony is in the early stages of developing a PlayStation Portable that is capable of running PS5 games natively. Keyword natively, and we'll touch on that. Bloomberg's also reporting that this would allow Sony to contend against Sony's competition like Nintendo, but also fend off Xbox as well, with who has their own plans for a portable. And Bloomberg closed it out by saying that this is still years away and likely could never come to market, which I would like to respond by saying, Sony, you're out of your effing mind. You greenlit the production of a car, but you're not going to make a brand new gaming handheld? Like, I'm sorry. You might be out of your mind there. And I think there's probably a subsect of gamers here who are looking at this like, didn't we just get a gaming handheld, right? The PlayStation Portal. Why would I want a different gaming handheld? And what they hit on was natively. Like, yes, you can play PlayStation 5 games and you can stream them to your Portal without needing a PlayStation 5. Totally cool. But what we're talking about here is that PlayStation is wanting to release a handheld device that could run PlayStation 5 games without a Wi-Fi connection. Without a hotspot on your phone. Just turn it on, play the game, and you're good to go. That is incredible. Now, I also made a note here because Bloomberg did suggest that this device could have like a mobile focus where Sony could be like striving to get their IP on mobile devices, and this could be a good gateway, which admittedly, I definitely don't like the idea of a PlayStation phone. Like a PlayStation car is cool, but like I love my Pixel. And I think the majority of mobile users out there have already made up their minds. Like, it's Galaxy, it's Apple, or it's Pixel. And for Sony to be like, we're going to convince you not to use that. I'm just like, it's so 2006. Let's move on to a different conversation here. And I can't stress this enough. A lot of this is going to hinge around the success of the PlayStation Portal. And I think that Sony's in for a surprise. because I think that while the cloud support has changed the trajectory of that unit completely, I think Sony's path and how they decide to grow the cloud beta will also continue to grow the need for a PlayStation native device, right? Like right now, you have to have PlayStation Premium in order to use the PlayStation Portal via the cloud. Why not just allow me to buy a game through the PlayStation Store and stream that game directly to my PlayStation Portal, right? Like, why not make that an option? Xbox is doing it. Why not do it for yourself? I feel like that's a no-brainer. And I totally will admit, cloud gaming is not for everybody. Some of y'all still have some backwoods, wonky-ass internet. But for me, I've got like 300 megabit down, 300 up. I've almost got a gigabit. Somebody came to my door yesterday trying to sell me it. I was like, hey, unless you got Girl Scout cookies, get out of here. But like, the internet here in Austin is very good, where streaming video games via the cloud is extremely acceptable and extremely doable. So for me, I'm good, but at the same time, a native device definitely intrigues me, because I will be the first to admit, cloud gaming doesn't work everywhere, right? Cloud gaming is only as good as your internet connection. But if you add native gaming to it, if I can play PlayStation 5 caliber games, PlayStation 6 caliber games on this device, I'm all in. And I think what this is beginning to show is that like Nintendo's blue ocean that they had with the Nintendo Switch is becoming very, very red. And with PlayStation, Xbox, Valve, Tencent just announced a brand new portable gaming handheld this week. Nintendo's blue ocean is becoming very crowded. And I really do believe that this next generation of gaming, the consoles aren't going to matter. What this next generation of gaming is going to be about is going to be handhelds and mobile. And it's very encouraging to see PlayStation take the steps to that next generation. Now, obviously, all of this is rumors, speculation, and PlayStation hasn't officially commented on this, so we will be watching this one very closely. But before we jump into our next story, I do want to introduce you to one more game. I'm a huge fan of hunting simulators. I fell in love with these styles of games on Google Stadia, and I am so excited that they're coming out with a brand new one. So without further ado, here is a brand new trailer for Hunting Simulator 3. Cyberpunk 2077 was in the news this week as the developer CD Projekt Red announced that the game has officially sold 30 million copies, which is absolutely wild, because as someone who followed the launch of this game and then the delisting of this game, to realize that this game has had a 360 turnabout, like coming from the dead, it's incredible. Like, let's just remember exactly what happened, right? Cyberpunk 2077, the first trailer came out 8 years or 6 years before the game came out. Anticipation was building. It was building. We all couldn't wait. And then the year came. We got the release trailer. Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out this year, and it was, dare I say, the most anticipated game of that year. Years of hype, and the game finally comes out to resounding groans. The game was bad. Cyberpunk 2077 had various graphic issues. The game was crashing multiple times. There was various bugs and sound issues. I mean, it got so bad that Sony and Microsoft both kicked the game off of their store. Like, do you realize how hard it is to get delisted by Sony? Because right now, in the PlayStation Store, there is a game that is called I'm in Love with Your Dead Grandmother, and somehow that game is still listed, but Cyberpunk 2077, no ma'am, we can't have that in there. That's a bad game. Loving your dead grandma? I see nothing wrong. So fast forward a couple weeks, CD Projekt Red comes out, they make apologies, they say we're going to do this right, we're going to fix this. They bunker down, they pound out the pixels, and they smooth out the wrinkles in this game, release a bunch of updates, eventually come out with a DLC, and this game, where it stands now, it is the full realization of what Cyberpunk 2077 should have been at launch. And I think that this proves as a testament, right? We shouldn't just release games and just be like, well, they suck, don't play them again, right? Developers should always be allowed to like grow on the vision, and like you should never give up on a game. I feel like that story is becoming too common. People are like, this game's dead at arrival, and then 5 years later we're all like, this game is really great. But at the same time, I think that this should serve as a word of warning to all developers that a delay isn't a bad thing, right? If Cyberpunk 2077 would have been delayed another year, right? People would have grown, social media would have been upset, but then 24 hours later, they would have been over it, right? Something else would have happened. Xbox would be threatened, and they'd be like, oh no, forget about Cyberpunk 2077. Xbox is shutting down. We have comments by Phil Spencer. Let's talk about them, folks. No one would care about Cyberpunk 2077 being delayed another year. And look, I say this as someone who played the game at launch, right? The game was rough. I'm talking dogs in the house, R-U-F-F, rough. Like, it was bad, right? But I played it recently. I played some of the DLC expansions. I saw the improvements made in the game, and it is incredible. The game is finally the full realization of what we saw in that original trailer that captivated millions of gamers. And it raises the question that, should it be Game of the Year, right? Cyberpunk has officially hit full production, right? The game is great, hit 30 million copies. Should Cyberpunk 2077 be able to compete for Game of the Year now, right? The game came out a while ago, I get that. But if you look at the game we have today and the game that launched, we're talking completely different games. This is night and day. This is a brand new game. Should it be able to compete for Game of the Year? And I get Game of the Year only qualifies for the games that released in the last 12 months. Yeah, but we now have a DLC expansion inside of Game of the Year contender. No offense to Jeff Keighley, but the rules have just been thrown out the window. So should Cyberpunk 2077 be given its roses? Should we praise the game at the Game Awards? At the very least, I think it would be awesome to come out with a category that's called like from coal to diamond, right? Diamonds are created when you get a lot of pressure, and you can create diamonds, right? What if we created a category for games that launched and they were rough? Like, I'm talking bad. But then the developer stuck with it, and they eventually came out with the vision. What if we had a category like that? I mean, games like Cyberpunk 2077 would qualify. Games like No Man's Sky would qualify. Fallout 76, Sea of Thieves. These were all games that launched, and they were very bare bones, and the developer just said, hey, let me cook. Let me get this going. And after a year or a year and a half, we all look at these games and we're like, fuck, this is fantastic, right? Look at like No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky was literally given their death rights. And Hello Games was the biggest laughingstock on the internet. I will never forget the funniest video that I've ever seen while doing this show was the No Man's Sky being like, this is what the game's going to be. And then it's like, this is what it was at launch. And somebody was like playing like, on a recorder. They were playing like the Jurassic Park music. Funniest thing in the world. But if you look at No Man's Sky now, Hello Games stuck with it. They continued developing. They continued releasing updates. And they now have, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but like one of the best open world video games of this generation. I feel like we should acknowledge that. And I feel as gamers, we should applaud developers from sticking from that. Like, yes, it sucks that you made people buy games for a broken game, and I feel like you should apologize, which most developers do. But at the same time, I doubt that the development team all felt that the game was ready. Right? I think if you were to ask the people coding, the people doing the artwork, the people doing the graphics, or even the QA team, like, is the game ready to launch? And they'd be like, we need more time. But there was probably people in management who were just like, push the game, get it out. I want Cyberpunk out. We said it's launching in 2024. Get the game out. And I feel like when you do see these stories and people are given second chances and they just knock it out of the park, we should applaud them. So anyway, I didn't want to spend too much time on the story. I just thought it was great for CD Projekt Red. And kudos to the development team back there. Especially the entry-level developers who are probably pounding away to make this game good and to like back up the vision of the game. Great job on it. The new update to Cyberpunk 2077 is fantastic. The DLC expansions are fantastic. If you've been waiting to get back into this game and you were scared at launch and we're coming up to the holiday season, definitely give Cyberpunk 2077 a chance, and you won't regret it. Now, enough of Cyberpunk. Let's talk about a brand new game that's coming out very soon. This one's a VR title. It's a VR multi-sport game. Reminds me of Wii Sports, very much so. So here's a brand new trailer for a game called Home Sports. New reports say that Nintendo's next-gen console will likely be unveiled in January of 2025 and released in March of 2024. Now, this information comes from a Twitter user by the name of Central Leaks, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what Nintendo's been kind of telling investors of saying, like, hey, it's going to happen this fiscal year. It's not going to happen before the end of December, but it's definitely going to happen this fiscal year, which I believe for Nintendo ends at, like, end of March. So it would make sense that we would see the game announced then. But I do have to say, like, as far as pressure goes, there is a lot of pressure on Nintendo here, and I hope that they are aware of it because there is a lot riding on this. Keep in mind, the OG Switch, right, the Nintendo Switch that we have today is almost 7 years old. That console released mid-PlayStation 4 and mid-Xbox One generation. And even when you look at like the specifications of the Nintendo Switch or the original Nintendo Switch, the hardware wasn't even comparable to the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One. It was more on par with like PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. Yet here we are in 2024, mid-PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X generation, and I gotta wonder, like, with the new Nintendo Switch, does Nintendo just say, we're going to slightly improve the current Nintendo Switch and bring it up to like last gen, so it's PlayStation 4, or do they just go all out and they're like, no, for real this time, we're going to be matching the current generation. And the other narrative here is like, we talked about it, PlayStation has a brand new gaming handheld. Xbox is also working on a brand new gaming handheld. You know, this next generation for Nintendo is not going to be like Nintendo Switch versus the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. No, it's very much going to be the Nintendo Switch 2 versus Xbox's gaming handheld, or the Nintendo Switch 2 versus PlayStation's new gaming handheld. Like, that's what we're talking about here. Because they're not worried about consoles. They know that they've pushed the console market completely as far as it can go. And everybody's looking at Nintendo being like, that's a nice little pool. I wonder if we can fit our boats in over there. And they're planning on going after their bread and butter. And I can't stress this enough, that for me, Nintendo can't just release like a slightly upgraded Nintendo Switch, right? They can't be like, oh, we improved the RAM. We improved the solid state drive. It's like, no, I need this thing to be next gen. Like, otherwise I'm not going to upgrade. Because the conversation is going to become, it's like, okay, I'm not going to pay for the new console just so I can play Zelda. What about all the other third-party games that I can't play on my Nintendo? I feel like that is the question that Nintendo has to look at this next generation. It's like, how do we bring back Ubisoft? How do we bring back EA? How do we bring back all of these AA developers who have released games on other platforms and not on ours? Our player base want these, and they can't get them because our hardware is 2 generations old. Now, the other thing that Nintendo could do, and I would not put this past them, is they just get weird, right? Nintendo is always known for being very weird when it comes to their consoles, and I could see them doing some like wonky stuff to the Switch. Prime example, Tencent just announced their brand new gaming handheld this week, and it has a 3D screen just like the 3DS. I could totally see Nintendo releasing like a Switch 2 that has like a 3DS screen. I would not put that past them. And from my perspective, adding to the pressure for Nintendo is that they are going to be overproducing Nintendo Switches, right? It came out a couple weeks ago from Nintendo CEO that they're going to be overproducing Nintendo Switches to make sure that they have so much stock. And the hope is that this will combat scalpers when the console comes out. But if this console is not able to catch the attention of the average gamer, and it's just like a fart in a church, right? And there's nothing cool about it, they are going to be sitting on so much inventory. And that is where the pressure is, right? Nintendo really has to knock this out of the park. Can they do it? 100%. I have zero doubt in my mind that Nintendo can excite their player base and get them invested in this new console. Because the reality is, you just announce a couple Pokemon games, a couple Mario games, and a couple Zelda games, or a new Metroid, and your player base is going to buy this new console no matter what. But the thing that I'm interested in is, like, how do you get that casual gamer? How do you get the PlayStation gamer to buy a Switch? How do you get an Xbox gamer to buy a Switch? How do you get a cloud gamer to buy a Switch? And that's the conversation I hope Nintendo is having internally, but only time is going to tell. Now, definitely worth noting that the information that we talked about from Central Leaks, it's all based off of rumors, right? Like, that has not been confirmed by Nintendo. And until we hear this from Nintendo, we should definitely take it with a grain of salt. But obviously, we will be paying very close attention to this like we do with any new console launch and bringing you all the details here on this show. But if you want to stay on top of the daily news as it develops surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2, make sure to become a Nerf Gaming News member, where you can get the brand new episodes of the daily as they launch every afternoon, bringing you the daily gaming news content that you need in your life. And I promise that'll be the last shameless plug that I have for this episode. But I can't promise that I don't have any more games for you, because I do. And this game has me very excited. I knew nothing about this. It's going to be launching in a couple weeks, and I think it looks absolutely incredible. This is a psychological horror walking simulator called The Cabin Factory. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Cabin Factory Corporation. Starting today, you will be one of our cabin inspectors. Congratulations. Due to a recent legal dispute that falsely claims some of our cabins are haunted, it's now mandatory to inspect every cabin to ensure the safety of all.
It is still unclear how the parents got trapped inside their own cabin, but the police have found clues that may indicate the fire was intentional. A criminal investigation is on.
Leave and abandon your poor.
By entering this elevator, you have accepted all the terms of your contract, which may be updated without notice.
Video game legend and PlayStation alum Shuhei Yoshida has announced that he will be leaving Sony in January. Yeah, this was a big story. Kind of an end of an era, if you will, because I believe Shuhei's been at Sony for like 31 years now, which I don't want to age myself here, but like that's pretty much my entire adult life. Like, as long as I have lived, Shuhei has been at Nintendo, which, Shuhei, I'm not trying to make you feel old, but damn, homie, I hope you're getting your pension. So, if you're not aware of who Shuhei is, Shuhei Yoshida is probably single-handedly responsible for the success of the PlayStation 2. He has had a massive presence in the indie space and is probably responsible for why 90% of the indie developers publish on PlayStation today. Shuhei Yoshida was in charge of PlayStation Studios up until 2016, when he handed over the reins to Herman Hulst. And dare I say, Shuhei's greatest accomplishment was a small little video that we got at E3. And this little video sealed his status among the gaming gods on Mount Olympus. Let me set the scene for you real quick. PlayStation 4, Xbox One era, we were all waiting on bated breath to figure out which console we were going to buy. Xbox came out with the first press conference. They announced the new console. They said, hey, this thing is going to have technology that once you buy the game, it's strictly yours. You can't share your video games. And the entire internet just responded, like, no one liked it. I mean, I wasn't an Xbox fan, but I was still like, yikes. I hope to God PlayStation's not going to do this. So then PlayStation comes out. They have the press conference immediately after Xbox. And they say, hey, if you're wondering how you share video games on PlayStation, we've got a fun little video for you. And then they proceed to show a video that I assume was filmed backstage during rehearsal that shows Shuhei holding a physical copy of a video game and handing it to his friend. Pretty much saying like, hey, if you want to share your video games, share your video games. We're not going to hold you to like one copy per person. That moment, I think, is when you had the momentum shift, right? Xbox killed it, the Xbox 360 generation, right? PlayStation 3 sold a shite ton of copies, or shite ton of consoles. But when I look back at that generation, I think the Xbox 360 definitely built the stronger player base. But that video might have been the moment that PlayStation just grabbed the reins and just kept riding to where we are today, where the PlayStation 5 is just dominating the Xbox Series X. Now, Shuhei announced their retirement on the PlayStation podcast, and I made some notes here because I think it's important to actually point this out. During the interview, Shuhei mentioned that he feels very positively about the current team at PlayStation and where Sony is as a company, and this isn't Shuhei being pushed out of the company. He made that very clear, because I think there's a lot of people that look at this being like, darn you, Herman Hulst, trying to ruin PlayStation and getting rid of the last beacon of hope. And I've even seen articles being like, Sony and PlayStation are losing their spirit with Shuhei. I don't believe that, but that's conversations for another episode. And Shuhei said that, like, look, this is simply the right time for me to leave, right? The company is in a good place. I'm in a good place. And it's time for me to move on. Now, for the question as to what Shuhei will do next, he pointed out on Twitter, and I don't know if this was a joke or if it was real, but Shuhei did say he's going to be giving voice acting a chance, which mazel tov to you, Shuhei. And look, I understand the chances of Shuhei Yoshida seeing this are very slim, but I do want to say thank you. Thank you on behalf of myself, who's been a PlayStation fan my entire life, who has played the games that you have worked very, very hard to get them published, to get them on the console. And I understand that we as gamers sometimes often look at things being like, why aren't the games coming? Why isn't this happening? And it might seem like we're unappreciative. And I do want to say, like, I understand there is a world behind the scenes that we as gamers do not understand. And Shuhei, you are wildly responsible for that. And you brought a lot of the games to the platform that I love to this day. So thank you for everything you've done for PlayStation. Thank you for your hard work. And if voice acting is where you end up after this, I hope to see you in a game and be like, hey, that's Shuhei. There's that Shuhei kid living his dream. But anyway, in all seriousness, thank you, Shuhei. Appreciate everything you did. And wow, we did not pick the next game correctly, because apologies to Shuhei. The next game we're going to be introducing is pretty much a blatant ripoff of PlayStation. However, it looks cool, so I figured we should include it in this week's show. It's an open-world multiplayer survival game where nature meets machines. No, we're not talking about Horizon Zero Dawn. We are talking about Light of Motiram. Apologies to Shuhei.
I call you forth, the fourth breath I grant you, to live in this world which spirals against time. We are with you always, as long as the world shall live. May fortune find you.
I had this dream where a god that blessed brought destruction. So why can't human beings kill God?
5 times I erased you, yet still you won't silence up. How much more resurgence do you need, anyway?
Elon Musk wants to open a video game studio because, as if catching robots mid-air, building luxurious electric cars, and running X wasn't enough, Elon wants to start a gaming studio. God! I would love to know how he manages his day, because I am usually spent by 2, and I'm like, I need to take a nap. Meanwhile, Elon does all of that, and somehow finds time to be like the #1 Diablo 4 player in the world. Yeah, in case you missed it, this isn't a meme. Elon Musk cleared the pit 150 in Diablo 4 at 1 minute and 56 seconds, making him the world record holder for the fastest clear time. And as someone who's casually played Diablo 4, I assume that's cool, right? If you got the world record for the fastest time, that's great. Maybe we'll see Elon Musk show up in that, what is that thing that happens on Twitch for charity every single year where they like try to speed run? Maybe Elon shows up for that and he speed runs a new game. Maybe he plays Sonic or something like that. But anyway, Elon wants to open a video game studio, and as for where this started, Elon responded to a tweet that was talking about how the ideology of the video game industry has changed by saying too many game studios are owned by massive corporations. @XAI is going to start an AI game studio to make games great again. God, there's a lot to unpack there. So let's talk about that real quick. An AI game studio, right? We've seen AI do stuff like concept art. We've seen AI do writing. I've used AI multiple times and been like, hey, help me come up with some videos that are search engine friendly. Like, I've dealt with AI in the past. But game development is going to be something that I think we're a couple years off from really, truly seeing. Like, I think we've seen it casually, but I don't think we've seen it at, like, a massive scale. That being said, I don't think that there'd be any issue with it doing it. The only issue we would run into is that you would have a lot of developers and a lot of artists who would lose their jobs. I think the stuff that excites me when it comes to like AI was back when Stadia was a thing. Stadia Games and Entertainment president Jade Raymond talked about like using AI in video games and how you could use Google's AI as like the intelligence for an NPC, right? So in a video game, like let's just throw out Elden Ring or Elder Scrolls. You show up to an NPC, he's like, welcome to my shop, how can I help you? And you're given like 4 different options. What if you were given infinite options, right? What if you had your microphone on and you were talking to an NPC as if it was your friend that's in your party or someone you're playing co-op with? What if the NPCs were intelligent enough and able to have uncanny valley conversations where it's like you don't know if it's a real player or if you don't know it's AI? That's the side of video games that I'm like, oh man, that would be cool. And that's where I welcome AI. I know those voice actors out there who are like, shut the hell up. Dislike, dislike, dislike. And my comment section is probably going to be filled with people who are like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. AI will be the death of video games. But I guess I'm more of a glass half full type of guy. That I'm like, there's positives to this, right? Yes, we need to talk about the fact that in 5 years from now, there's going to be an AI-driven gaming news show like this one trying to put me out of business, and I'm going to be like, what the hell? Tell this guy to get off the air, and I'm going to be pitchforks and torches, and I totally understand why writers and artists and everybody hate this, because it jeopardizes our livelihood, and I totally think we should figure out how to not let that happen. But at the same time, there's some common sense stuff that AI does that I think we could easily take advantage of, so... Anyway, just an interesting story. It was a big story this week. I thought it was too big to not talk about on here, and we shall definitely see. But before we jump into our final story, I got one last game to introduce y'all to. This is a graphic adventure RPG that is set in the year 2053, which I assume AI has taken over by that time. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is Neon Blood.
Peggy 16.
Xbox's next update for their Android mobile app has been delayed indefinitely. Yeah, before we left for the holiday break, Xbox's Sarah Bond posted a tweet that said, "At Xbox, we want to offer players more choice on how and where they play, including being able to play and buy games directly from the Xbox app. I recently shared our ambition to unlock these features first with the Google Play Store on Android devices in the United States, while other app stores adapt to meet consumer demand. Due to a temporary administrative stay recently granted by the courts, we are currently unable to launch these features as planned. Our team has the functionality built and ready to go live as soon as the courts make a final decision. We are eager to launch and give more choice and flexibility to players." Now, I got some questions because we don't know anything about this update, right? There was no details as to what this update was going to bring to the Android store, and I feel like that would change the conversation completely. If I were to assume, I would say that based off of like Google shutting this down, it has to do with Xbox's you can play anywhere, right? Your Android market, your Android phone is now an Xbox. You can buy and play games there, which would make sense why Google's like, you're not doing this yet, Microsoft. Shut this down. Now, that being said, the Xbox faithful were pretty pissed about this, right? Conversations on Twitter of people saying, how could Google do this? Why is Google doing this? First, you kill Stadia, and now you try to take out Xbox? All right, I admit, that was me. I'm the one that tweeted that. But to Google's credit, they did respond back to Xbox by saying, Microsoft has always been able to offer their Android users the ability to play and purchase Xbox video games directly from their app. They've simply chosen not to. The court's order and rush to force its implementation threaten Google Play's ability to provide a safe and secure experience. Microsoft, like Epic, are ignoring these very real security concerns. We remain focused on supporting an ecosystem that works for everyone, not just the two largest gaming companies. Now, let's clear up the air here. Google's being a little cheeky here, okay? With them saying that they've always been able to, that's not a lie, right? Microsoft, any publisher out there, has always been able to post games on there to sell, right? You can sell anything through your app. The catch is Google's going to get a 30% catch, right? If you sell Halo Infinite on your Xbox app, Google would get 30% of that sale, which would cut into the market massively, which is why Microsoft doesn't want this. In fact, Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney chimed in over on X by tweeting, Google's statement is deceitful. Shame on them. They well know that a 30% cut they demand is far more than all of the profit from game streaming. They know this because they blew hundreds of millions of dollars building the failed Stadia game business. And okay, look, Stadia's been dead for like 2 years now. Can we just all let it go, right? I say that as someone that liked Stadia, but like, why do we have to just keep bringing Stadia up? Can we just bury it and let it die in peace? Is it necessary to dig up the body of Google Stadia and just take a knife and just keep stabbing it 10? Now, the other thing I want to point out here is what both companies are talking about with the U.S. courts is that the U.S. courts are technically giving Google like a grace period here. And the grace period is mainly designed to allow Google to fight off or to appeal their decision, right? The current thing is basically saying that Google cannot charge 30% on purchases made through apps. And the courts are giving them the ability to basically say, hey, here's why we don't think this is a good idea. Here is why we think 30% is fair. And let me tell you, you thought the pressure behind the Nintendo Switch was big? Let's talk about that lawyer. Because I would hate to be that lawyer who is working on that case to be like, this is why Google should make the additional 30%, because you are talking about a ton of money, and dare I say the most powerful company in the world really, really wants to win this case. But anyway, that's kind of where this story's at. We just have billion-dollar organizations fighting it out on social media like a bunch of catty teenagers. We'll definitely be paying close attention to this one and keeping you up to date, whether it's on this show or on the daily. Keep your eyes open for more. But honestly, that's all I got for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and for joining us again for another weekly episode of the Nerf Report. Thank you again to the Nerf Report best friends and casual friends who make this show possible. Your support is massive, and I appreciate it so much. I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving as we move into the end of the year. I hope you guys have a fantastic holiday season, whether it's Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or Christmas. enjoy the hell out of it, and I hope you play a bunch of video games. So without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Bryant. This has been another episode of the Nerf Report, and we will see you in the next video.